Welcome to the Vivo 45LS tutorial series. In this video, we will be going through the Setup menu, which can be accessed by selecting the second menu button. Pressing Setup will allow the user to view the settings for the current treatment mode, which is indicated at the top of the screen. By using the up and down navigation keys, you can navigate through the menu to highlight different settings. Changes are made to individual settings by using the left and right navigation keys. Any changes to settings will take immediate effect and do not need further confirmation. All the settings displayed in Setup section will be relevant to the treatment mode that is in use. These settings may include inner pressure ventilation mode. The inspiratory pressure is an absolute setting and not a pressure above the PEEP value. This is the total pressure delivered to the patient. The PEEP setting. The PS Calc displays the calculated pressure above the PEEP pressure applied to the patient. The rise time settings. This is a function that allows you to adjust the speed at which the air will be delivered to the patient. In the pressure ventilation modes, this can be set from the fastest setting of 1 to the slowest setting of 9. The Vivo 45LS offers the choice of 2 inspiratory trigger settings for spontaneous breaths: the eSync trigger or a flow trigger. The eSync trigger setting allows you to set a sensitivity of 1 to 9 or off. The higher the number, the lower the sensitivity of the trigger, with 1 being the most sensitive and 9 the least sensitive. The flow trigger setting allows you to set a sensitivity of 0.5 to 9 liters per minute or off. The higher the number, the lower the sensitivity of the trigger, with 0.5 being the most sensitive in adult mode and 9 the least sensitive. In a pressure support mode, the expiratory trigger can be adjusted, which allows you to match the patient's breathing cycle as closely as possible and allow for a smooth expiration. A setting of 90% would mean a 10% drop in peak flow would cycle into the expiratory phase. This can be set down to 10% or a drop of 90% of peak flow. The inspiratory time settings, which vary depending on the mode in use. The min and max inspiratory time settings are important for patient ventilator synchrony. During pressure support, the patient has the control of initiation and cycling of a breath. When ventilator asynchrony occurs due to lung compliance, lung disease status, or patient-related issues, setting a minimum or maximum inspiratory time can be clinically significant. For example, when a patient is cycling too quickly, the user can set the minimum inspiration time to make sure the patient gets at least a minimum volume of air and length for each breath. The maximum inspiratory time can be used to make sure the ventilator doesn't prevent the patient from exhaling or providing enough time for the patient to exhale completely. These 2 settings simply tell the ventilator you want to deliver an inspiratory breath that will last at least the minimum amount of time and will not exceed the maximum amount of time. The patient can cycle into exhalation at any point between these 2 values. A mandatory backup breath rate. The backup rate is relevant where we expect spontaneous breathing effort from the patient. If the Vivo 45LS fails to detect a spontaneous breath rate above the set backup rate, it will activate the backup breath rate from the ventilator. The backup rate will be deactivated when the patient's spontaneous breath rate rises above the backup rate. The backup inspiratory time will be used to define the length of inspiration for each mandatory backup breath. When using pressure ventilation modes, there are target volume setting options. You may set a target volume setting and minimum and maximum inspiratory pressure settings. This will allow the ventilator to increase or decrease inspiratory pressure between these 2 pressure settings to maintain the set target volume. The pressure will fluctuate up or down in 0.5 centimeters of water increments, reacting to the measured tidal volume from the previous breath. When using pressure ventilation modes, there are auto EPAP setting options. You may set an auto EPAP setting and minimum and maximum expiratory pressure settings. This will allow the ventilator to increase or decrease expiratory pressure between the 2 selected settings to maintain the upper airways open. The pressure increase per event can be set at 0.5, 1, 1.5, or 2 centimeters of water. In case of normal breathing, the pressure decrease is fixed at 0.5 centimeters of water and can be set to start after 2 to 12 minutes. In a volume mode, The tidal volume setting will define the volume of air that will be delivered to the patient at every breath. The rise time setting will define the percent of the set inspiratory time that will be used to deliver the set tidal volume. During the remaining part of the inspiratory time, the ventilator will create an inspiratory plateau phase. The flow pattern used during volume-controlled ventilation can be set to a square or a decelerating flow. When using an SIMV mode, the settings look very much like the ones we described previously. Note that there is no breath rate setting in SIMV. But instead you will set an SIMV rate, which will define the number of mandatory breaths the patient will receive. In between the mandatory breaths, the patient is free to trigger more breaths. These breaths will be delivered at the set support pressure, defining the peak inspiratory pressure the ventilator will reach for the patient's spontaneously triggered breaths. Note, this is a pressure support level above PEEP delivered to the patient. Finally, note that on this settings menu we are on page 1 of 2. This is indicated at the top of the settings page next to the time display. To go to the second page, simply press the Setup button again and it will change pages. In this instance, it takes you to the SI rate and ramp settings. If you enter the SI settings with the right arrow button, it allows to set the SI rate. It defines the size of the SI with SI %, and it also allows you to select the preferred inspiratory time for the SI, which can be different from the inspiratory times of the set normal breaths. It is also worth to mention that the Vivo 45LS allows for a SI function both in pressure and in volume ventilation. Under the Setup menu, you find the ramp feature at the beginning of the treatment. Once you activate it, you will be able to set the ramp time and start pressure. Selecting and changing settings works in the identical way with the arrows up and down and left and right. Pressing the Setup button again will return you to page 1 as indicated by the tabs. In the lower right corner of the front panel, there is an information button. Pushing the I button will give you more information on a highlighted settings. Once the I button is activated, it will remain active until the button is pressed again. During activation, the user can press the up and down arrows to gain information each highlighted setting. This concludes the setup menu tutorial for the Bria's Vivo 45LS. For more tutorials about the Vivo 45LS, please visit the Education by Bria's website. Thank you for watching.